Wonderful morning to all of you here. Rajesh, over the years, MakeMyTrip has navigated market changes, technological advancements. First, take us through some of the key milestones that you feel have shaped the company, have built it to what it is today, and like the panel suggests, solid ground. How have you been able to do that?
Yeah, so let's talk about that. And I think it's been a fascinating story for over 2 decades now.
Yes.
23 years with the tremendous amount of learning experience along the way. So talking about milestones, there are a few come to mind, like the big milestones, and that certainly have shaped the organization as we stand today. So I think the first big one, and I'm skipping the startup journey because startup journey was not any different, to be honest, all the other startup companies would have gone through.
Yeah, it was a triple whammy, the dot-com bust, everything went wrong that could go wrong.
Everything went wrong and we realized that we were very early. It was pre-sunrise and so on, and we had to do the course correction there. But the first big one was for us was, in hindsight, maybe it was a little early, was in 2010 when we IPO'd in US. And IPO is the buzzword even today, right? So back in then, and that's like 13 years old milestone that I'm talking about, valuation-wise, we were like 450 million. And we were not raising less than 100 million at that point in time. So it's not that a ton of money was being raised, but I think it was from an organization stature changing standpoint, I think it was a milestone. I think the various other things, the satisfaction of taking the company public, etc., was on one side. But the most important thing, the thrill, to be honest, that came out of that was when you saw an admin person buying a house, literally, and back then, right? So we used to have about 75-80% of our people who had stocks, and suddenly they were all looking for that paper, which they thought, and they had kept it somewhere. And there are some, sort of live examples when suddenly some of them had actually lost them because they didn't realize there was any value. They suddenly started thinking that this paper had some value. So that was really the thrill out of it. So that was one. It changed the game because we were being sort of compared at the global
You were sort of the first movers in everything.
Right.
Not just that you were too early, but like you said, stock paper and all of that. You were the first movers in everything to provide employees with those options.
That's right. That was part of the DNA, and it has continued, and we should talk about that maybe later. And I think the second big one was in 2016, where we admittedly, as an organization, I don't think we were ready. We were big enough. We were matured enough to be able to do a big merger transaction. And that happened. And we've got Prakash, who's the Redbus CEO. He's in the audience. The IBIBO group, which had Go IBIBO brand and the Redbus brand. In fact, Redbus, the interesting story is that before IBIBO acquired Redbus, we were also very keen on Redbus. So we eventually, and sometimes, I don't know if it is destiny or whatever, but eventually then Redbus became part of the family as well. So that was quite interesting because Naspers outbid us very, very badly on that. And that was the big milestone. And there was a big milestone because there are more people coming, 2 brands, 3 brands. How do you sort of integrate the culture? How do you make sure that the people issues get resolved and addressed? And how do you sort of then take the business strategy forward with the multiple brands suddenly, where, like I said, that we were not necessarily very matured. I don't think we were, as an organization, I don't think we were ready for absorbing this, but we had to make that move, and we made that move, and we started working towards it, and now I can look back and saying that hard work paid off, and both the brands are doing really well. And then the last but not the least, I would say more recent one, which came after pandemic. Pandemic was the biggest disaster in our industry, the macro disaster in our industry that we faced. And then coming out of it, then the business was being revived. We turned the company profitable. And for the last 10 quarters that we've been profitable, and last quarter we reported record top line and record bottom line. And that's also very satisfying. So from a milestone standpoint, 450 million in 2010 to 6.5 billion today. also sort of, give some sort of maybe an indication of some achievement that the organization and the people of the organization have achieved. And people are again very happy. So the second time around, if IPO people were happy with the stock, and now even more, because the value has just significantly increased.
Absolutely. Rajesh, I would like you to continue to reflect on your journey and talk to us about some of the challenges. And you mentioned COVID, which was perhaps the toughest challenge that you had to face, because on one hand, you had to innovate models to kind of keep business afloat, because travel and tourism had come to a halt. And on the other side, you also had to do some crisis management, which all companies had to do. So talk to us about your innovative thinking at that point of time.
You're absolutely right, Shruti. It was a mother of all the crises that we faced. I mean, and some of the crises that you mentioned, triple whammy, early days, those crises, we had some experience of that, but we were very small. We were very young and small. And this time when it happened, we were like 3,000 strong workforce,
so it's
right?
easier to pivot when you're a smaller company
Absolutely.
to change.
Yeah, because then there are 10 people in the room have to just do it, right? So, and here you had to be responsible for 3,000 people. And suddenly, post the lockdown in that quarter, our revenue had gone down by 95%. So it comes crashing down, and then what do you do? So exactly two things, we ended up sort of doing. One was, of course, you couldn't have not looked at the crisis and managed the crisis. So the team got together and we started working towards. So one track was focus on how do we want to manage the crisis, and there were many, many things that we had to do. Thankfully for us on that track, it wasn't an existential crisis. And maybe that was a learning from the past, because we had money on our balance sheet. So there was war chest lying with us, which meant that it wasn't really an existential crisis. In our industry, for many, it became an existential crisis as well. So a lot of the work that happened on that front, but more importantly, I think the best part, as I look back now, as we've recovered and we've started to see sort of the results coming out of those investments, we literally doubled down on investing into creating new platforms, figuring out the new revenue streams, figuring out what are the new product innovations that we need to do, figuring out what are the areas that we can double down on automation, for example. And some of those initiatives were more revenue accretive potentially, and some of those initiatives were profit accretive potentially, and we can see the results. So today, what I just mentioned earlier, that if we have been able to sort of achieve, and get to the platform that we have with the solid foundation, let's say last year we touched, our top line was $8 billion and profitable. It gives a feeling that we are, the foundation is solid and the platform is set for the future. Because what was important was, one was recovery, and two, what are you going to do beyond, right? So I think those are the two tracks that we worked on, and hopefully that's paying now.
Like you mentioned earlier also and now, that you came out stronger post the pandemic in terms of a stronger balance sheet as well. How did you achieve that? What was the biggest, what would you say, happened that led to this?
Right. No, actually it was not one factor. Although when you look at the P&L, it will appear like this was only one cost item that we had to fix it. But to be honest, that wasn't the only thing that we ended up doing. I think it was a bunch of factors that you had to, what also happens, Shruti, in all fairness is, and I've seen it now over the years, time and again, during the down cycle, when you're going through tough times, the challenges, you're forced to just, think out of the box and look for opportunities. And the more you start focusing on opportunities, you realize that there are a ton of opportunities that are there. And it is for you to make the best use of the difficult time, focus on opportunities to secure your future. So I guess that was really the thinking at that point in time. So like I was just mentioning earlier, there's one example on the cost side, on customer experience, and we thrive on our customer experience on all our brands. We ended up just improving our customer experience on the post-sale side significantly. Not necessarily to cut cost on the people side, we automated the whole thing, but leveraged the technology, and we realized we were not necessarily paying that much attention in the past because there's so much going on, and then you get lost in prioritization and stuff. But as we had the downtime, BAU was not really happening, and we focused on that area. And the results that we saw out of that was tremendous, and naturally it sort of helped the bottom line as well. And then there are many platforms, like I was mentioning, that we've invested. I mean, corporate business platform that we set up. We launched in GCC in the middle of COVID, actually, the new market. We just announced the intercity cab acquisition. We built a small, sort of mini fintech business under Trip Money for us. So many initiatives, to be honest.
We'll come to those initiatives a little later. And delving deeper into what you just said, MakeMyTrip offers a wide array of services across spectrums, from flights, homestays, hotels, cabs, buses, everything. You spoke about providing customization. Tell me, how are you tailoring every customer's needs, because consumers' needs and choices are changing drastically? How do you, stay ahead of the curve? And also, most importantly, you spoke about customer feedback, which is very important.
No, absolutely, and it's a great question. So at the core of it, Shruti, I'll tell you, we were very clear, and thankfully we were very clear, because there was a time that there was euphoria in the market and everybody was talking about super app. And more horizontally, and there are many sort of players that came into the market, and they started with sort of thinking about that sort of vision. And from our point of view, what we were very clear about was that we would like to be a travel tech company. So our core business, core area that we will do our business will be travel. And therefore, our vision was to be the vertical super app and continue to keep going wider and deeper. Deeper in terms of just providing the experience, deeper in terms of reach, but wider in terms of just providing the offerings. Right? So therefore, can we be at a position where we are the one-stop shop for literally every single travel use case or travel-related use case? So that really was at the core of it. And then slowly and gradually we started building it. I mean, 2010, I was giving you the example. Back then when we IPO'd, we were 90% of our business was flights. And today when we speak, I mean, you've got flights, you've got ground transport business, the hotel business, the ancillary business, and so on, right? So you've come a long way, but at the core of it that was really the thought. And from a consumer insight standpoint, I must tell you, the culture is such in the organization that there is no product feature that gets developed. There is not even a small addition or the enhancement that takes place that happens without consumer insights. In fact, yesterday I was just having a sidebar with, I was sitting at the speaker's lounge, and then we were just generally chatting, and suddenly realized on the table there were like 3 power users of MakeMyTrip. And they started giving me feedback, and then I picked up even yesterday 1 or 2 nuggets that you would typically not pick it up, right? Because you're so closer to it, and you're saying power user and maybe something, and I made a mental note and saying that go back. So it is ingrained in the culture that you have to continuously keep looking at and going back to the customer and see what is that pain that we need to solve, what is that issue that we need to solve, how do we enhance the experience significantly. And for that, and there are various ways of collecting consumer insights. And that's really the culture, and we keep doing it.
Absolutely. And picking up from what you just said, tell us, how has the vision of MakeMyTrip evolved over the years, and what are the key leadership principles that have guided you and the team through the many companies' growth phases?
Yeah, it's been a long journey, and it's been an evolving vision on the long-term strategy, if you will. And I was just giving you a sense of, on the product portfolio side, how did we evolve, and how are we thinking about it? I think the other aspect of the vision was also very relentless customer focus, and to there the tagline really was that can we potentially aim to achieve that every customer of ours is our brand ambassador, like literally, and that brings in, sort of everything into it in terms of just keep solving. And that's the reason we have today, evolved within, on our 3 brands, we would have about 72 million customers that we would have serviced live to date. And that's the only reason that we've been able to sort of do it. And today the repeat rate is about 70% every quarter and so on, right? So, and you don't have 70% of your existing customers come back to you unless you focus on experience, right? So that does not happen on spending marketing dollars. It happens on just continuously keep providing the experience and solving the problem and keep coming up with the product innovations all the time. So that really is the vision on the consumer side. And then, which is what we've been sort of relentlessly following. Sorry, remind me about the second part of your question.
The fact that, the key guiding principles,
Or the
leadership principles. Yeah.
So obviously, and we learn over the years, every time you're sort of looking at and solving problems, you learn a new thing and the new principle gets added. But I'll tell you, at the core of it, I mean, very fundamentally, one of the important things that we've sort of tried to have that in the organization is the entrepreneurial mindset. And I'm talking about purposely mindset rather than, just being an entrepreneur, right? I mean, I'm just saying everyone who's operating in the organization should be thinking with the mindset, which is an entrepreneurial mindset, which is, you have the hunger, you have the passion, you have the ownership, you have the responsibility, you have the accountability of whatever is being assigned to you. Right? So if you end up sort of following that, because there's always a risk as you scale up the organization that you might dilute some of your, sort of core fabric. Yeah. And see, our endeavor has been, and hats off to the leadership team that we have, that every single leader has sort of, tried to make sure that this is inculcated deep into the organization. And some of these principles, if you, sort of continue to keep following, you stay focused on solving problems, and and some of the usual things, right? That everybody would say that, whether is it an empowering culture for people? Yeah. Is it? I think the other thing that I could possibly say is that we have a culture of, let's say, work hard and a party hard. So we also celebrate all the achievements really hard and unwind as much as you want to, but then get back to work when it comes to just delivering it for the customer. So some of these principles,
and
I
good
think
governance.
And good governance, actually that goes, and that's table stakes for us, and maybe that is why I didn't really say that. And I'll tell you once very interesting trivia on good governance. Yeah. When we were IPOing, and yesterday I was listening to Rajan's conversation, so it sort of came up there as well as one of the audience questions. When we were going for IPO in US, everybody was trying to scare the shit out of us that the level of governance, the level of compliance in the US market is going to be of a different order. Yeah. And why are you sort of looking at US market? And there were many other reasons at that point in time. The Indian ecosystem was not ready. Today it's rocking. But at that point in time, it wasn't really ready. So we had to decide that. And our reaction, natural reaction, whether it was Deep or me and the other co-founders, that this particular thing, there may be other things that we would be worried about, but this particular thing we are never worried about. And the reason for that was that, from the startup, first day of incorporation of the company, the way Deep had started and set the tone, and all of us sort of joined hands, the level of corporate governance, the level of compliance, etc., just came naturally to us. So that really was never an issue. So maybe that is the reason why I just did not mention it.
Another first mover there. Too many first movers for MakeMyTrip. Rajesh, how does global economic and technological advancements have impacted MakeMyTrip's growth strategies, and how do you plan to leverage those in the future? And speaking of technological advancements, if you could throw some light on how AI and generative AI, you're using them to kind of stay ahead of the curve.
Again, a great question, and I told you, we are a travel tech company, right? So it's clearly tech first, and we've always thought tech first. It can't be tech alone, but it's tech first for sure, right? So everything that we approach, we fundamentally think it from the technology angle, that how can we leverage to whatever technology that is available out there, for us to be able to just leverage that and solve the problems. Alongside the journey, and there have been many, many occasions where there were game-changing moments, and they were also very, very stressful in that sense operationally. And one of the biggest one that comes to my mind, and today we use this device like nobody's business, like for anything and everything. And if you look at Anupam Kher's latest WhatsApp viral video, he's already sort of criticizing this device quite a bit already. And for a different reason, and maybe there is merit in that. But this was a game-changing moment in the internet technology industry, and for all our businesses, because this was a massive shift from the device that was being used as a preferred device for internet access suddenly became like a tiny little thing, right? And people sitting in the room and people who are involved in have the engineering background would tell you how difficult it was to make the shift from suddenly the internet technologies at that point in time, which was more web-led, and device was bigger, desktop-led, change to when there was an Android operating system and an iOS operating system, and on the front end, the back end, the engineering, the coding languages, and so everything changed. And this workforce that we had, none of them were trained, right? So it was not necessarily the problem or the challenge was to reskill the workforce, but it was also a challenge of a different order of changing the mindset. How would you start thinking about designing the front end now in a tiny screen? And those days when you would look at it in the early days of, today's smartphones have also evolved significantly, but those days, like I'll tell you an interesting one, and that's the point on staying ahead, that, we saw it coming early and we started developing. Our first app was in BlackBerry, was on BlackBerry, and BlackBerry is not even,
obsolete,
it's completely obsolete today. And that is what we tried. So the endeavor has also been all the time to see it coming early, right? Because, technology is so fast changing, that you have to be on your toes and you have to be thinking. And the second important point I would make is that it's fast changing, it's dynamic world, but sometimes there's a lot of noise, right? So not necessarily, with respect to your own business, not necessarily every technology is going to make the difference, right? So whether metaverse is going to change the life for, the actual travel, maybe not. Maybe certain parts of that technology could make the difference in your business. But the key thing is that you have to look at in your business and see what is that, what are those use cases that you're going to attack with the new technology that is there, and is that making sense or not, rather than just getting carried away, right? And today we are talking about, in the same breath, the buzzword is artificial intelligence. And like Rajan was saying, I don't know, out of the 400 portfolio companies, some, I don't know, obscene, some 150 companies are only AI.
Yes.
Investee companies in their portfolio. That's insane, right? Now, obviously, part of it is the momentum, and everybody sort of looks at it, and I'm sure they would have done a great job in terms of evaluating every single, company that they invested in. But, when it comes to MakeMyTrip, or when it comes to travel tech as a space, we are very focused on figuring out, and this technology is very, very promising, by the way, I must say that upfront. We are figuring out that what are those use cases that we will use. So like, for example, we already have few that we've gone live with, and there are few that are work in progress. If you go on, our platform and to try and do the hotel booking, you will see, them coming, even on Redbus that we've gone live with the conversational flow, multilingual, voice and text together. Lot of the leveraging data science and AI ML on top of it. Many new innovative products that we've come that are not coming from partners. So all what you need to do is to make sure that you keep abreast with the latest and much early than anyone else, and then apply yourself and put some serious investment behind it. Then only you stay ahead with it.
All right. You mentioned and you touched upon this earlier, Rajesh. MakeMyTrip recently invested in Savari, a cab company focused on intercity travel. What kind of growth do you anticipate in this segment? And are you going to put more investments, more there?
Most definitely. That's one of the area that is identified for future growth. And that's the reason why we've made this move. And the reason for that is very simple. Actually, maybe twofold, right? So one, at the country level, that you can see the road infrastructure is just improving significantly. And then more importantly, when you look at this space, and this is more the intercity travel, because our expertise is a lot more intercity travel rather than intracity travel. So we are not talking about mobility use case, but we are talking about travel use case. If you study this supply landscape a little bit more deeper, you realize that it is hugely fragmented. And there is huge amount of headroom in terms of just improving the experience for the customer. I see this industry actually going, and we don't have the access, the Avises or the herds of this world in our country right now. But I do this, you see, right now everything is shopper driven, right? But I do this, do see this market now, given the road experience and the evolution that is happening to evolve into a self-driven sort of market as well, right? So I think, and there are use cases that are developing in terms of travel, short vacations, and then people are taking a lot more short vacations than long vacation. Every weekend, pretty much, the people are just picking up the car and going. And therefore, from demand side, I think there's a lot of potential. There is, on the supply side, there's opportunity because it's highly fragmented. And we are doing this, by the way, under Redbus brand, and Prakash is going to talk about it in another panel.
Okay.
But I'm sure he'll share more insights on it. But clearly we see this as a massive opportunity. While there is one aviation market that's sort of growing, and and now this year was growth in the domestic aviation market, and future is bright because there's a lot of orders and there's demand. There's also, on the back of road infrastructure improving, the ground transport, all the use case, including the bus and the car, is also going to grow significantly.
And what about cruise? That's a segment that you've been eyeing for quite some time now. Will it materialize this fiscal?
I know it's a tough one, and we have to do it. And
You're
said
in
that
the air, the bus, the roads everywhere. Cruise now.
We definitely want to get the cruise. Actually, it's in the works. So let me just say that upfront, it's in the works already. There's a lot of work on, on the front end that you need to do. So, so far all the travel use cases that we've added on our platform was relatively easier. There is more work in terms of just making the user interface on the front end that it takes. And also, I think we were trying to do it pre-pandemic, then pandemic sort of pushed us back. But we are going to bring that back. So very soon.
All right. Before we wrap up, you're a sports enthusiast, Rajesh. What are some of the learnings of the field that you bring to the corporate table? And also, it's an intensely competitive sector. So what keeps you motivated? And also a piece of advice for anybody who wants to start up in the travel and tourism industry.
All right. In your last question, there are multiple questions. So let me try and address those. So, what keeps me motivating? Whether it is intense competition or less competition or whatever. But I think it's all about, what you're doing. Are you enjoying that, what you're doing or not? And you were trying to sort of link it with, let's say, the sports side of it. And then, yes, there is competitiveness there as well, as you follow and all of that. You obviously play for win, but the way we sort of play the game is more constructive, more the good side of competition rather than the negative side of competition. And competition is healthy, by the way, in the market. I actually don't like dominant players, right? Because that is potential misuse, and it's not good for the consumers. The size of the market is so big that there's place for everyone. It's just that the wishful thinking always is that the competition should continue to keep playing the game more fairly and squarely rather than disruptively, just for the sake of being disruptive about it. So I think that is really the connection. But the learnings that you get to learn from as a sports person is also what I think the biggest one is the team spirit. You know, we're all in it together, and we definitely, you know, sort of believe and make my way. It's never one person's sort of achievement. It's always we all come together, you know, work hard, and then we achieve and party hard, achieve our goals and party hard as well. So it's about collaboration. It's about working together. It's about making sure that we are all rallying together. That's really the value that you get from that. And in terms of just the piece of advice, and I think the learner people here, all of them, and you know, and they bring specialized skill set to the table, a lot of experience, a lot of you know, solid background behind. But if I have to just say one thing, that you know, just from setting up your own business standpoint, I think what is important to keep in mind is that this is it's not a fashion statement. You know, there's a buzzword like AI, and today that you know we should have a startup tomorrow, and we should get into startup. It's you know, you should only get into setting up your own business if you are absolutely fully determined and you are thinking long term. Right,
Absolutely.
because it's not an overnight game at all, and you know the picture might, on the face of it, when the story is being told, etc., might look rosy, but there is like 23 years of hard work that has gone into it, right? So and that is true with you know the stories like InfoEdge. That is true with the young companies like Policy Bazaar. You know, everybody that you would talk to, you would hear the same consistent story and the message. That let us not think about you know, like a quick overnight success. Think more long term, and then build long-term sustainable businesses, and that's the only thing that I would say.
All right, on that wonderful note, it's time for me to wrap up our discussion. Rajesh, thank you so much for your valuable insights, and it was an absolute pleasure talking to you.
Thank you, pleasure.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.